And obviously you mentioned South Africa there. What other countries have you earmarked as potential locations?
So the three places, South Africa, Nigeria, and Rwanda.
I hope that Dricus Du Plessis wins against Sean Strickland. Now, I believe he will win. I know he will win. He's got the tools. South Africa, Nigeria, and Rwanda. Get ready for UFC Africa. Let's play this small clip and listen to what Dana White said concerning UFC Africa. But if you are an MMA fan on the African continent, things are about to become great. Let's have a listen.
You talked about new territories, and every time I speak, I always ask you about UFC Africa. I know that's something that you said that's going to be a bucket list thing for you.
Yeah, it's super important to me.
Can you provide any?
So here's the thing when we talk about UFC Africa, right? Dricus, he's South African. So there's this whole thing about, well, if you go to South Africa, you're not really going to Africa.
Yeah, there is that notion, and with good reason. South Africa is one of the most developed countries on the African continent. In terms of infrastructure, the 2010 Soccer World Cup helped us a lot and, progressed us years ahead. So we've got venues, we've got great stadiums, we've got broadcasting infrastructure and all those things. And then the development that has happened in the country over the years has meant that we get ahead on some of our African counterparts. That doesn't make us better than others. It simply means we are more developed. That's just all that it means. But the rest of the continent is catching up. So there's a notion that if you come to South Africa, because it's so developed, you have not come to Africa. But that is not true. We are very much a part of the African continent, and we consider ourselves Africans because we are Africans.
You know what I mean? But if the guy who ends up being the guy is from South Africa, then we would probably start in South Africa.
So if the guy who ends up being the guy comes from South Africa, then the UFC is going to start in South Africa. I hope that Dricus Du Plessis wins against Sean Strickland. Now, I believe he will win. I know he will win. He's got the tools. I'll make a prediction video later on that particular subject. But if the guy who ends up becoming the guy is from South Africa, then they will start in South Africa. So if you're an African and you want UFC Africa to come to Africa as soon as possible, we better get behind Dricus Du Plessis and show him our support, because he has the potential to bring the biggest MMA company to the African continent. Whether we like it or not, man, the UFC is the biggest MMA company. So let's get behind Dricus if you want to see UFC Africa in Africa. Guys, this is an event. This is a bucket list event for me. I'm gonna have to work really hard and raise the money. I want to be at that venue, whether it's in South Africa or on any part of the African continent. Hopefully when the UFC comes, I would have raised enough funds for me to be there.
And then that my long-term goal is to really plant some roots there, like we're doing in Mexico, like we did in China, like we're going to do in other spots too, and start pumping out young talent from that country.
And obviously you mentioned South Africa there. What other countries have you earmarked as potential locations?
Well, we've talked about Nigeria. You know what I mean? We've talked about, what was the two? There was Nigeria, Rwanda were the two places that we're talking.
Dana.
So the three places, South Africa, Nigeria, and Rwanda.
South Africa, Nigeria, and Rwanda. Guys, this is something that I hope to see happen, and sooner rather than later. And in my opinion, the only person right now who can bring the UFC to Africa is Dricus Du Plessis. Let's get behind Dricus. Let's show him love against Sean Strickland. And I hope that he brings it home. Because if he wins, there's a huge chance that UFC Africa can happen sooner rather than later. Others have had an opportunity to do the same, but they've not done it. Dricus, the true African, has the potential to bring UFC to Africa sooner rather than later. Yeah, I don't know if I should have said that. Because I am a huge fan of Israel Adesanya as well. That's a different video, totally different video. Hopefully you enjoyed this piece of content. And if you did, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. Let's engage. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. God willing, I will see you on the next one. Cheers for now.